back to whatever it's going back to.
Okay.
Is
So he's probably.
it's the same. It's just putting cabinet members on. I just thought we come back.
Thank you. Can I just say welcome to everybody and thank you for coming. We have one substantial item on the agenda, and so if we go straight into business, are there any apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Bob Harris has given his apologies.
Well, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest at all?
Yeah, my regular one is that I'm an associate trainer for Women's Aid who received money from the Bishop's office. So yeah, that's that one.
Thank you.
And my one for Cyfarfod that's within my portfolio.
Well, thank you. Anyone else? And just myself, I'm Chief Exec of Safer Wales, and as a charity we do receive some funding from the Commissioner's Office. Okay, so if we go into minutes of the previous meeting, if I do both at the same time, so accuracy and any matters arising, I don't believe there are any. So on page 1, any accuracy issues I can see?
Yes, the co-opties, that came up in the last meeting as well, so it hasn't been rectified.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a local councillor.
Brilliant, thank you.
Apologies.
If we can change that, thanks, Simon. So page 2.
Actually, sorry, just back to
No,
page
go
one.
on.
It actually has Mark Tribe listed as being
Oh yeah.
present, so
Yeah.
he wasn't.
Yeah, he
so,
wasn't.
yeah. So I'm just
Thank you. No, I didn't pick that up. Thank you. Are there any, and everyone else happy? Page 2. There's no actions, everything okay that. And obviously we've done the report, the report and that's been announced, so there's no further actions. Right, thank you. So if we go on to agenda item 4, I believe that we have, are you okay to go and
I'll go get
see
the
if the
Commissioner. I'm going to put
is
the camera onto the back of it.
okay, thank you. I'm fine. So
Yeah, because obviously there is. It's going to be bad. These questions too. It's good. Just complicated. This job. From North Wales. Yeah, so he's asked.
Morning, welcome.
Yeah.
Hiya.
How is everyone?
Fine, thank you. Where's the sound gone?
We are in Merthyr.
Only when I come in, anything going on.
My family, they always one jumper colder than everywhere else.
Yeah. It's hiding behind the clouds, so we're all right.
So, thank you. So we're just on the main agenda item, which is the report for proposing the reappointment of the Chief Constable of South Wales Police. Commissioner, I'm not sure if you would like to introduce the report or speak to it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and Boris, good morning, everyone. So I just wanted to begin by setting out what I'm asking of the panel today and why, and then I'm going to hand over to Lee to take you through some of the process that we've gone through and further rationale behind decision before obviously opening up to questions. So the paper before you, as you will have had opportunity to read, relates to my decision to support the reappointment of the current Chief Constable, Jeremy Vaughan, and the South Wales Police under what is a nationally recognised retire and rejoin scheme. This is a lawful and established mechanism used across policing in England and Wales, including at Chief Constable level, and is grounded in both national guidance and police regulations. This approach is necessary because of changes to police pension schemes over time that mean that some senior police officers would otherwise have to leave policing altogether simply to be able to access their pension. The retire and rejoin scheme allows experienced leaders to step away briefly for pension purposes and then lawfully return, avoiding unnecessary loss of leadership and stability. Without the short break that is being proposed in the paper in terms of breaking service, taking a pension and returning to work can result in large and unnecessary tax charges. And that's not just for the individual. More importantly, from my perspective, that is tax charges that could affect the public purse. The retire and rejoin scheme allows this to be handled properly whilst maintaining leadership stability for the public. So indeed, at the heart of this decision, it's about leadership continuity and stability, especially when faced with what is being described nationally as the biggest reforms to policing in 200 years. Policing in South Wales is, like everywhere, is also operating in very complex and demanding environment. And we're consolidating the gains made through the recent police uplift programme, managing sustained demand, and as stated, actively preparing for what has been described nationally as the most significant police reforms in a generation. Operationally, South Wales Police is also preparing for a significant role in the Euros in 2028, which is being described by UK policing as the biggest joint policing operation ever hosted by UK and Ireland. And that's requiring unprecedented coordination across forces. This is a complex and large-scale public order and public safety. So we have a number of significant developments, both operationally and strategically, all aligning at the same time in 2028. All of which have informed my decision in relation to this matter. So I also want to note importantly that South Wales Police has received consistently positive independent feedback from recent HMI inspections, reflecting the continuous improvement in performance, governance and operational effectiveness. And obviously much of this work, as you already know, has been led by the current Chief Constable and has been reported to this panel at the end of last year and as recently as February this year during precept setting discussions where that operational performance was articulated to you as a panel, and you helpfully acknowledged and took assurance in terms of leadership, delivery and direction. It's also relevant that Chief Constable's current contract runs until September 2027. So that's the contract that he is currently subject to. So without this proposal, there is a real prospect that he could choose to leave policing at that point or earlier, purely because of pension and tax considerations. So by bringing this proposal forward now, I'm seeking to secure continuity of leadership beyond that point through a defined lawful extension rather than risk avoidable disruption at a critical time for the force and for policing nationally. So as Police and Crime Commissioner, I have a statutory responsibility to secure the maintenance of an efficient and effective police force for the communities we serve. And in my judgment, maintaining experienced and proven leadership at this point best serves that duty. So I want to be absolutely clear on one point, that this decision is not about operational direction. It's about governance, legality, ensuring continuity of leadership that I as a PCC am responsible and accountable for. So I recognise that the retire and rejoin arrangements can raise questions, and particularly around process, transparency and propriety. This is why I've chosen to bring this proposal to panel today for scrutiny, even where the legal framework does not require a refresh recruitment exercise. I promised you that I wish to be as transparent in my decision making and open in terms of dialogue with you as a panel. So I've also taken independent legal advice, which again, I am going to ask Lee to walk you through so that you understand the process in detail that we've gone through and the considerations. So I'm going to ask Lee in his capacity as my monitoring officer to explain the legal basis for the approach, including why the reappointment process is lawful, proportionate and consistent with national guidance, and obviously to address questions that you may have today. And also I'm hoping that we will address the questions that you have raised in the pre-meet session that you had last week. So I'm going to pause there, and unless there is any immediate comments, I'm going to hand over to Lee to take you through some of the mechanics.
Thanks.
Yeah, actually, you've helped me. Thank you for the message that Simon sent on Friday. So hopefully you received the email back with some of the clarifications there, I hope that answered some of the immediate questions. They were things I was would look to address for this meeting as well anyway, but you've obviously got it in writing as well, so hopefully that was helpful. We also have the benefit in this situation, it's not something that's happened overnight. Actually, an initial request came in some months ago, so to reassure the panel and certainly to reassure myself, I guess, in terms of the Commissioner's decision-making process, very aware that we've learned from other areas where this has been a request has been processed. In fact, over the last few years, there are 6 or 7 of other instances where this has been supported. It is legally, it's something under the Police Reform and Social Responsibility Act. I always hate that act because it's such a mouthful. There is a response. There is a right for the Commissioner to support such requests. Some of it comes down to, of course, a change in pension legislation, and this over time, this will become less of an issue because new chief constables won't have joined the scheme back, the older scheme, which goes back to 1987. So I think those of us who've worked in local authorities will know that we've probably got several iterations of pension schemes, and various aspects of them apply, and then it change, and then it. Pensions are very complex, but as the Commissioner's laid out, this is it is not the drive for the PCC's decision, but it does dictate the mechanics of it, and it is a right of chief constables in this position to request it, particularly where there is it's helpful to commissioners or forces as well to retain that specialist knowledge. So in terms of the simple, one of the first questions is retire, rejoin lawful for chief? Well, the simple answer is yes. And I think as the Commissioner's explained, and as hopefully the report and the guidance shows, there is legislation and both Home Office and NPCC guidance, which was attached to the report, which explains that this actually applies to all ranks. So it is something South Wales Police is also doing for other senior ranks, because of the same rationale that the Commissioner's outlined, because particularly where there's been quite a high turnover of new officers coming, losing a lot of experience is quite challenging for forces, as it is for any organisation. But as you can imagine, police forces, if you have a force a lot of young staff and don't have that experience, it can put the organisation in quite a vulnerable position. So there's nothing in the legislation and the guidance that I've shared with you that prevents the Chief Constable from accessing the scheme. Indeed, based on publicly available reports that we do know, at least 6 forces in England and Wales have already approved similar arrangements at Chief Constable level. And I know as a panel in your pre-meet, you picked up on that. You will have, and you did also note about the differential in terms of the gap. Not wanting to save anyone's blushes, that does relate to the pension rules and the age of the individual. So that way maybe you picked up a difference in a force within Wales where there was only a day gap. That was because of the age of the individual, meant they didn't need to take them. I think I addressed that in the email to you. It's a bit odd, I know, but these are the rules. There's not. Well, I suppose what I'm trying to illustrate, this is not something we've just made up. It's illustrative of following guidance. I did obviously speak to my colleagues in the other force as well, confidentially, as to how the process went. We've had advice from both the joint legal services, but also, again, to reassure myself as much as the monitoring officer for the Commissioner's decision, we had independent legal advice in a firm called Waitmans, who also have advised other Commissioner's offices in relation to the process as well. So not only have we had our own legal advice, we've had independent legal advice as well. I think the important thing to note as well, the Commissioner has agreed with this, assuring that the Chief Constable will abate his pension. And I think what I mean by that, and I'm sure you're aware, I don't mean, is this is a mechanism to ensure that there's no double payment of salary and pension, i.e. Commission's not drawing on a pension coming back and then having his salary. So the simple terms, that prevents it going forward, having full wages and full pension at the same time, which would be obviously a significant safeguard in terms of not having cost to the organisation or the public purse. So there is no additional cost to the taxpayer throughout any of this as well, which I think is an important factor for the Commissioner and for the panel. In relation to the query about does it require a new appointment process? Again, this is a key point. It's an important question, but no is the simple answer. Again, as I think I replied, the regulations allow for Chief Constables to be appointed on fixed term basis, provided statutory limits are observed. So there's an initial contract and a year-on-year rolling. That does allow, therefore, and as the Commissioner does do, almost a Chief Constable is almost on a permanent job interview, in the sense of there's an assessment of performance against the Commissioner holding the Chief to account. As you are aware as well, the Chief does come, even though your role is to hold the Commissioner to account, has come to this panel on several occasions, particularly around the precept setting, in terms of the demand, in terms of discussions around performance and the HMIC work, which generally is very positive, as you know as well. I think the Chief did sit here and talk about how his ambition as well is to improve those HMIC inspections even further to become an outstanding force. And I think that's one of the factors as well, of which the Commissioner was concerned about, that wanted to be able to see that through and continue to drive positive performance forward. And the trajectory of performance, and one of the rationale in the Commissioner's thinking was based on what's the evidence that shows that the Chief has been doing a good job. Parliament really has deliberately designed the system to recognise the need for stability and continuity of Chief Constable. Therefore, the process, which is clarified in Home Office Circular, I appreciate, sorry to use sort of very bureaucratic language, confirms that this process is appropriate. There is potentially that there has been high turnover of Chief Constables in Richards across England and Wales. In fact, and that's increased. So the number of retirements over the last couple of years is double what it was the previous period. In Wales, we've had the retirement of a couple of chief constables as well, and you know, that it's not a simple process appointing a new chief constable. I think a number of you of this panel might have been involved in the last process. And in terms of numbers of officers, the numbers of the interest, particularly coming into Wales, is probably not as great as we would like as well. It has been challenging for other forces in terms of appointment process. It is also a costly process as well. So part of the rationale here is this is a more effective way to retain the skills and experience. Because of that and because of the guidance, this is an established process to not have to go through and not treat it as a fully new appointment, which is why you don't have the full confirmation process that you would have to, because the current chief constable has already gone through that and continues to have oversight from the commissioner. And as I mentioned before, I know of in recent years at least 6 or 7 of different forces where this precedent has already been followed. So we're not the first by any stretch of the imagination, and the number of forces where this has occurred. With that in mind, therefore, the guidance is that in order to show there isn't a gap in leadership of South Wales Police during the short break, the deputy chief constable will act up into the role of chief constable during that period as well, which again is an established process, and it is important that it is an acting up. It's not an interim, it's not temporary, it's there to cover that period as well, so that we have that cover during that period. So the commissioner has acted lawfully and in terms of the oversight and the process. The other reason, so that is also another reason why the chief constable isn't here to answer any direct questions, because it's not a reappointment process we're going through here. Though part of this process will be just a year extension into his contract to see us through the 2028 period, because as you're aware, with the decision on PCCs as well, we're in a position where if the chief was to go with his current contract, it would be September 2027. Commissioners going in 2028. That is a huge void in police leadership locally and for South Wales. So there's a huge risk, more so than when maybe originally some of the other retire and rehire chiefs, because we've got this change in the policing landscape. So again, would be a concern, I think, for the public, no doubt for yourself as well, in terms of losing experience all at the same time would be extremely risky. So therefore, I think it's really important. I think an added, not necessarily, but there's another, I think we are in pre-election period right now as well, and I think having operational policing potentially in a position where they may be drawn into what could be seen as any political conversation is also a potential risk as well. So we are just erring on the side of caution in terms of this as well. And of course, this panel is discussing an individual. It's probably not the most appropriate to have the individual present as well. So the process for today as well, it's necessarily prescribed in terms of the role of the panel, the commissioner wishing to be open and transparent, and hence the report that we are bringing today to reassure you, I hope, that the proposal is lawful, proportionate and consistent with legislation, national guidance, and is firmly within the Commissioner's statutory discretion. So the role, though, is for you to be able to be aware and have some oversight of the PCC reasoning and process. It's not a return to the recruitment exercise, just to reassure you, and it's just to give you an overview of everything that we have gone through to date, and hopefully that sort of adds a little bit more of context to the written response which I provided to you on Friday. But if there are any questions or anything I can ask in terms of the concerns that you raised, more than happy to answer questions, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the response that you gave, because I realise it's been quite a quick turnaround for you with that response, so we are really grateful for that. I'm going to open it to the floor. Does anyone have any questions they wish to ask the Commissioner or me? Louisa?
Thank you for just to reiterate, Bernie, thank you for the email. It was very detailed and really give a good understanding. Just after a little bit of clarity around the contract, his contract. So when he was reappointed early autumn, his contract ends in 27, but does that mean it's renewed past 28 then? Just a bit of clarity on how that is panning out there.
So in terms of my decision will be to extend the contract to the end of 28. So and really the principal rationale behind my decision was making sure that there was continuity of leadership across that change period. So from next year onwards, both the governance situation is going to start managing transition from one body to the next. And obviously there's wider reforms ongoing, which at the moment we are uncertain on. So for me, having that continuity of leadership across the force to that end date made more organisational business sense to me than sticking with the 2027, which I think would have been a massive change right in the eye of some really significant planning and present a risk.
Do you feel confident that our transition period is enough time with all the changes that's on the horizon?
I think it takes us through the immediate period. Obviously, we are going to be planning transition certainly from our office from now. Also, it will give the new body and new governance body, whatever that looks like, then the opportunity to reassess the situation and take decisions on it. So I feel that I'm taking a decision up to the length of time that I feel is appropriate for me before a new body comes in, then to be able to take a view on what happens next. And obviously that will be down to them.
Just in terms of the contract, it's not a new process. It'll be the
Same terms.
same terms and conditions.
Yeah, sorry, I should have qualified that as well. There'll be no change to T's and C's. Yeah.
I noticed Sean and then.
Yeah, thanks again for the report and your email update. So just so I got to test my understanding, is Jeremy's contract will be up in September next year?
September 27, yes. Yeah.
September 27. So it'll be a month and a day break.
Yeah.
And so it'll be his new contract then will run till the end of October in 2028. Yeah. So it's September he finishes, a month and 1 day. So it's October the 2nd, if you like. And then it runs for a fixed term for 1 year after that. Is that right? We have
Term to the end of 28.
yeah.
Yes.
And then will that come back to the panel again for that extension for another year, or will that be the commissioners just to endorse that and roll it on for another year?
So we, as part of this process now, the chief will take that break and we will extend the contract. So this one decision, we will extend the contract to the end of 28 now.
Yeah.
Any further decisions beyond that will be for the new governance body to take that decision in terms of recruitment or extension.
That's what I wanted to get right in my mind. So
because the current arrangements in relation to PCCs end May 2028.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
that's what I
do. So the new, that as the commissioner said, that's why, to be fair, there should be an opportunity for the new arrangements to make a decision on whether it's appropriate to extend.
I feel it's appropriate me taking a decision now, so that affects what is in the short and medium term in terms of both strategic governance and operations, rather than taking a decision actually very close to what will be new governance leadership, which I feel actually is probably more appropriate for new governance arrangements than to take a revised view of the lay of the land and what feels most appropriate.
But the new governance will have to adopt what's in that legal advice anyway, won't they? And what's in the
yes.
Unless there's any
nothing
changes.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks, Chair.
Just ask, within the documentation that we had, it said about rehire. Once they're rehired, they go back on probation. Is that correct? Would that?
No.
Because it's continuity, which is a bit strange, really, when I was reading that. So,
is that?
And just
no, I think it is hard to get you around, but in terms of chief constables, I know the advice is no. There's no need for probation.
So does that sort of for any other sort of police officers then, that they go on probation if they,
I don't, it's not
Rehire.
usual.
no,
But I think there is some local discretion.
Right,
with
okay.
it, particularly maybe,
yes.
how do I say it politely, the lower ranks possibly, you can have your local discretion, but that's not the situation, and that's not the advice we've had in this circumstance.
Am I correct in thinking some people can be rehired at a higher grade? So if they've suitable or something like that, so that might be
That could,
probation. may
it's a different,
come into
yes,
play.
it's a different.
Right,
I just think that
Okay.
that's the way that-
Okay.
yeah.
Gap in service where the probationary element come in. Did I read something?
If you're getting the changes in the,
But we're not the only public body that does this anyway. I know the NHS does this, civil service do, yes.
I think there's an issue with retention
Yeah.
of knowledge and corporate members, because
Yeah.
that is a challenge, I think, for the
Yes.
public sector, full stop.
Yes.
Gareth, you got a question?
Yeah, I've got a series of questions and I don't mean to be awkward, but
You're going to be anyway.
It's not awkward, it's a good question. Go on.
Okay. The first thing is, it would have been nice to see the South Wales Police retire rehire policy for all staff. Because obviously, the force should have a policy. I've not seen it. I can't find it on the website. And obviously, what are we considering this against? Because obviously we can't look at the Chief Constable in isolation to the rest of the organisation. So I think we need to see that in reality. And the points people have just picked up, looking at it, you can be reappointed to a higher rank if that's a need, but you need to look at the policy. The guidance obviously doesn't deal with Chief Constables. The guidance actually deals with anyone below the Chief Constable. You will find nowhere in that guidance that's been supplied. It actually relates to the decisions the Chief Constable can make. But I think obviously on an equality basis, it should relate to the Chief Constable. But if you have a read of the guidance, it does.
And I have, and I've noted that point, and that is why we've then sought independent.
And I don't think it's unreasonable PCC whatsoever, on an equality basis. I think the whole issue, which again, Lee raises about the break, and there's nothing in the guidance, etc. It comes from HMRC, it does. And it's, whilst it says a month and a day, my understanding is that is 31 days and a day, because there's no different definition of a month. So, I'm just wondering whether that can be checked.
Yeah.
What I'm concerned about now is what's come out, and I've got other questions apart from that. In paragraph 1.2 of the report, it says the Chief Constable's exempt record is for more than 5 years in role, and in paragraph 3.4 it says obviously he's been in post 5 years and a 4 months period. Okay. The regulations actually state under Regulation 11 that the appointment to the rank of Chief Constable must be for a fixed term, and the maximum initial term is 5 years. So the Chief Constable has actually been in post longer than what you can allow him for statutorily.
So the Chief Constable was appointed in 2020, had an initial 5-year fixed term contract, and my predecessor took a decision. Can you remember the date? And is already
22.
Yeah.
Okay.
22 and extended it to 27.
Okay.
Obviously, a number of the issues that we are now dealing with were not pertinent or a consideration at that time, which is why I now feel that 2027 extension falls short to enable us to see us past what are now contemporary issues.
But he's still in breach. He's still in breach then, because if the initial term was for 2 years, which is obviously what he did to 2022, I'm only asking you to check
Yeah,
it says. Is that the next term can only be for 3 years. So the issue is, presumably the previous PCC didn't take it anywhere. He made the decision himself. He didn't bring it to, I don't know whether he brought it to this panel or any other panel. I don't know whether he's got the power to do that. I've got no idea. And again, I think the point you quite rightly made is, with all due respect to you, basically about being open and transparent. My understanding is the guidance says actually you do need the approval of the Police and Crime Panel to make that rehire and retire policy. So, Lee said it doesn't need it, but I think someone just needs to check it and that. But I think someone just needs to check now if Jeremy was appointed from 2020 to presumably 2025, then what power does the PCC at that time have power to extend it for another 5 years, given that the regulations say that the maximum his initial term is 5 years? So if he only appointed him for 2 years, which clearly, and then he's taken it on himself to do another 5 years, then there may be a breach of the regulations.
This was checked with the legal team, and there's not. I'll put something right into it.
Yeah, I think
not-
that just needs to be, because otherwise, you know, I don't know whether that question has been put to them, but in
Yeah,
accordance
no.
with the
Yeah.
regulations,
It-
and it would be
it's-
worthwhile seeing.
But absolutely for completeness.
Yeah.
Happy to come back to you.
Because otherwise you could just go on and on and on.
Has
In
been.
some respects, the PCC, I'm not saying it's yourself, you're being very open and transparent, so.
No, what you'll find is if you want to go beyond, essentially, it's a bit of a rule of thumb. There's a maximum of 8 years, but you can go beyond that. But with the
Secretary of
Secretary,
State said,
yeah.
yeah.
And we check,
So that's
we
what
checked
we
all of
checked all
that.
of that.
Yeah.
So we are aware.
But there are checks and balances only. It says a maximum of 5 years.
And that's why I've taken legal advice
Yeah,
on
and
it.
then-
As the monitoring officer, I've
Okay.
checked it. So I'm reassuring you as the monitoring officer of the panel that Commissioner has taken the appropriate space.
Yeah.
And we haven't breached.
I think it would be useful to see the PCC's report about extending it from 2022 to 2027,
Oh, the previous commissioners. Okay.
because how can you make a decision without seeing it? You know, I don't know what was said. Was there a report?
There has certainly been, I'd have to double check. There's a new report, and I think it was referred to in reports and the financial planning and the extension. So I'll come back to you on that.
Yeah, because if we're going to be open and transparent about this, what I'm just a bit concerned is where is this information
So-
for us to make the decision?
Well, I know, I can assure you that I've said, I mean, you can have, you know, as the monitoring officer, I've checked this, and we've had legal advice both from our joint legal team and Waitman's, the independent legal team. In terms of the terms, that was clarified that it was appropriate.
I'm not disputing.
No, well, you are disputing it, and
I'm
I'm
not
just making
disputing.
it very clear that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, then as part of the report process, then surely we should have been able to see that.
This is a
report.
decision of the PCC, you're the
Okay.
previous PCC, so.
Okay.
and you're here to question the current PCC.
Right, okay. There's a question about the fixed term contract, which obviously Sean's raised. It would be useful to get the dates in the report. So it's the Chief Constable wishes to retire in September. What date in September is he retired? Is it the end of September? So if it's 30th of September or whatever. And then what is the dates of the fixed term contract, the next contract going forward? Because obviously once he terminates, I assume, again, subject to be interested in your advice, is that once he terminates, that contract comes to an end. So his contract, which was extended till 27, comes to presumably an end. And then I assume from that date then, again, is the maximum term 3 years.
So post today, I will be in dialogue with the Chief Constable about the appropriate point in which to take that break. And we will obviously then set in train in documentation the dates and the specifics. My proposal would be that I will bring an update report to this panel when we sit in June, so that then all of the practicalities that have been worked through post tense for information then can be raised and shared.
That's okay. It's just knowing what the exact dates are, because I think because at the moment they're not exact, are they there? This is what end of,
Yeah.
you said, whatever,
Through-
which Sean
through those
raised.
Work through those practicalities post this as
Yeah,
a
but-
process, and then we'll report back.
Given the intervening period of a month and a day, I understand there's also a requirement for the Chief Constable to be re-vetted and reattested, because obviously he's no longer the Chief Constable on the day he finishes. He's no longer a police officer on, I assume, the day, and therefore he has to be re-vetted and reattested.
He's done every year anyway.
Yeah. Is he vetted ever? That's okay. Lovely. The issue around the cost of appointing the acting up Chief Constable, then I assume there's a cost to that, because they all like their rank badges and new hats and et cetera, et cetera. people can frown, having been in the police service 42 years myself, as a special constable, they do like their rank badges and their hats. And I'm just wanting to ensure is that, you know, that cost is kept to a minimum, because obviously the law requires you to provide to have a chief constable. So therefore, I assume whoever is acting out would have the
Yes, and the salaries are set nationally, as you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So we
Well, let's deal with that. My final question then is, if you're going to appoint an acting chief constable, are you going to pay them a salary, or are you going to consider paying them an honorarium? Which you've got power to do under the legislation and Home Office Circular 002.
we will follow the
218.
guidance of the circular, yeah.
Yeah, so you can pay an honorarium, which is obviously then less
Yeah.
than the
Yeah, for that month.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Thank you for your answers. I'm just going to do a check if anyone else, has anyone else got any questions that they want to ask? Or there was something, some of what I was going to ask have been covered, particularly with you two. I think what would be interesting, because I'm conscious that there's this transition period that we'll be going through, and then there'll be a new governance structure. And so for the chief constable, I think you're really clear in why you're going to the term, and I'm really grateful for that, because that clarity is really useful. It just got me thinking then, because obviously there's other officers across the force who are in a similar position, and I'm just thinking of that leadership. So not for today, but maybe for a future meeting, it might be useful to get that resilience, just a map out of that resilience of the force in relation to particularly the more senior ranks that may be having to do this. I know that just for that assurance of that resilience over time, really, that we don't get a cliff edge in 2028 as well.
And my intention in any of it, you know, as the panel and as part of the overall governance arrangements, my intention would be to make sure that you're kept updated at regular quarterly panel meetings, even if there's not anything for substantive discussion. It's important that you understand where we're at on that journey, and therefore what steps might be being taken over the coming couple of years, because it's going to be quite unprecedented moving from one model to the next once we're clear on what that direction of travel is. So absolutely take your point, Chair, and we'll come back to you on that.
Thank you. I'm conscious. Oh, Sean, sorry.
Yeah, can I just one question, Chair? So presumably that month and one day we'll be without a chief constable and operating.
No,
You know,
that's
an
right.
acting chief constable.
So presumably the deputy will step in there.
Actor.
And would that be the same? I mean, Jeremy is in good health and keeps himself really fit. You can see that. But in the hopefully, God willing, he doesn't fall into poor health. But if there was a period, an extended period of ill health, presumably the deputy, Jason, would slot in again as a deputy.
It tends to be the standard arrangement that the deputy would act at that the chief constable was unavailable for a period of time. Obviously, if that becomes prolonged, there would be a question of need then to think about.
But it would only be for a year anyway. It's a
Substantive
yearly
recruitment.
contract. Yeah.
But
Okay.
as you said, Touchwood, the
Touch
chief
wood, yeah.
constable is in good health and will lead us through across the next couple of years. Thank you, Sean.
Sorry, but sorry, just one. No, it's not a matter for you, PCC, but obviously once the chief constable, the acting or whatever they are, acting chief constable is appointed, then there is a requirement to have a deputy as well by law. So I assume that whoever gets the acting role as chief constable will appoint one of his one of the assistants, and will that be a competitive basis, or will it just be this individual, he's the most senior assistant and therefore be fitted in? It's not a matter for you, obviously, it's a matter for the chief constable.
To determine, but again, take your point.
So
Okay.
Can I just put in a supplementary there? So it wouldn't automatically be the deputy chief constable. It'd have to be appointed.
No, so the deputy chief constable would be the acting chief constable.
That's
It's the
what, yeah.
deputy's role to stand in and take those responsibilities. I think what is being described is ensuring then that there is a
Yeah.
deputy in that position, because once you've moved up, you need to
Yeah,
fulfill what would be those duties, and it would be for the acting chief constable to take a view as to
Yeah,
which
'cause
of
if-
those assistants
The
might.
captain goes off the field because he's injured, you expect your vice captain to
Yes.
take over.
And those acting and temporary arrangements, occur across police that, because of a command structure, there is not, space to have gaps in critical leadership positions. And so this goes on, on a regular basis. But again, to be able to report back on any detail, as I said, I'll make sure in June's meeting that practicalities are communicated. And
So
as a panel-
although it's expected the deputy will take over, or the vice captain will take over, it has to be ratified and appointed, or is it just automatic?
It's automatic. The deputy will
automatic.
just be appointed in.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
I just want to thank you because obviously you've had a number of questions. You have been really transparent. Thank you for that reassurance as well you've given in relation to getting legal advice on the matter for the previous decision, because that's useful to have. So thank you for that. So currently, unless anyone's got any other questions now, so for the panel, our current decision in relating to the principle of that retire and rejoin, and whether we're satisfied that the commissioner has been thorough in her assessment, objective, that it's based on merit, and that there's transparency within this process. So I don't know whether I'm going to look to Simon now, whether should we take a vote?
Yeah,
Do we need
take
to
a
do
vote.
that with the commissioner
Technically,
here?
the panel can veto this. You need 8 of the full membership of the panel to do that. But I think what the panel needs to be looking at is the panel satisfied the commission has undertaken a thorough, objective, merit-based, fair and transparent recruitment reappointment process? And if you are, then obviously you would vote in favour of the proposal.
So would it be when we've done this before, there's been times where the commissioner's left, or do we do that? Or I'm sorry, I'm just taking a
It
view.
doesn't matter.
Or are we happy to do the vote?
Well, with your permission, Chair, I'd like it to be minuted that, and I'm sure how others feel that, I'm really happy that the chief is taking this on, because I feel he's done a great job, and I think it certainly goes with my blessing. I know it does with the commissioners too, but I'd like that minuted if you could. And obviously he meets the minimum standard, the 10 minimum standards for rejoiner.
Yeah.
By a country mile. So I'd like that minuted, that it's with our blessing. Thank you.
Personally, I feel the same. I think we're lucky that he's staying on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree entirely with what everyone said, but there is a slight issue about dates and technicality of exactly the dates. And we're going to get an update from you, which is helpful. So I think that it needs to be noted with the proviso of those being of parity, because we've talked about both October as being a date and the end of 2027, which are different dates. Yes. So and so I feel a bit confused about the dates, really.
We'll have that in June.
Just a quick clarity, that his current contract is to September 2027. And we're extending that contract to end of 2028.
Right.
It's 12 months from
Yeah.
September.
Okay. I think now I'm clear.
We're bringing this decision early,
Yeah.
so that we can
No,
take
that
that
makes
opportunity to
sense,
take the
yeah.
break whilst, now appropriately, so that we then take the extension decision. I will come back then with some of those practicalities to arrangements once they're finalised.
But you'll come back on the same terms, presumably with sickness and holidays and
Yeah,
everything.
same terms, no change.
Yeah. Yeah, you won't come back for a year and then take his holiday and sign it for his back date.
And the reason part of the reason as well is wanting to bring the report here
Yeah.
with coming back in June, as the Commissioner said, with confirming the dates, because it would be presumptuous to have confirmed all of that if there were going to be any issues that we needed to address.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
I've had a request that we just have a few minutes to discuss something, to take a break. Do you mind if we do that for a couple of minutes, please? Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Just wait out by then.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Thanks.